For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to the Gist on Strat News Global. Hi, I'm Surya Gangadharan, and today we are going to talk about the Twitter deal with Elon Musk taking over control of this social media site. So I have a small graphic first to begin with, just to get some details about the deal. It's among the world's biggest tech deals. Elon Musk is buying Twitter for $44 billion. And Twitter will go private with no board to oversee Musk's actions. Pretty much emperor of his domain. So those are the facts. Let's now go to my guest, Jayjit Bhattacharya. You've seen him on our channel before. He's the president of the Center for Digital Economy Policy and our go-to man for a lot of tech issues. Jayjit, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Jayjit, first tell us about Elon Musk a little bit. We know he's the Tesla guy. He's got pots of money. But what else can you tell us about him?
I think he's a very innovative person, and I think he's actually put Africa on the global map. He's the first richest man in the world who is of African origin. And I don't think most people realize that he's an African origin person. And he's in the top 10 richest person, the richest person in that sense. He's also been able to successfully navigate in geographies where other businesses have not been able to navigate, such as China. He's been able to successfully have a large business presence in China, which talks a lot about his ability to successfully step aside on political minefields or geopolitical minefields in that sense. And clearly, some of the things he has done has been game-changing, starting from a electric operated vehicle to making rockets which are reusable and therefore crashing the cost of launching satellites to space, making it much more accessible for quote-unquote the common man. It's still not accessible for common man, but we can see the dots where the common man will finally be able to access space. So he's a very, very credible person as a business person.
Mm-hmm. So rustling up $44 billion, is it that easy? I mean, he seems to have done it in a matter of days.
To give a perspective, that's almost half of the total direct tax collection of Government of India. So that's the amount we're talking about. What we rustle up in the entire year, half of that is going to rustle up in a few weeks' time. So clearly, he is a person of immense resources, and clearly, I'm sure he's putting a lot of his own money and a lot of his own skin in the game to be able to get that kind of money from the market. So it is an absolutely awesome feat that he's pulling off. It is not easy by any stretch of imagination. And do keep in mind that India is one of the largest economies. So what he's able to do is comparable to an entire country, which is one of the largest economies. So it's absolutely stupendous of what he's pulling off.
So what does he expect from Twitter? Is he expecting to make a profit? Does he intend to scale up operations? What will he do?
So returns are made in multiple ways. I'm sure he'll make a profit directly from Twitter. If you look at Twitter's current stats, last year they made almost $500 million of a loss. If you take away the $700 million or thereabouts charges that they had in terms of legal charges, so even if you take that out, they barely had a profit of about 200 to 50 million. If you look at other social media platforms out there, let's take Facebook, which is supposed to be struggling, quote unquote. They had over $35 billion of profits, just plain profits of $35 billion. The revenues are upwards of $200 billion, whereas Twitter's revenue is barely $5 billion. So given the kind of pull that Twitter has and the kind of impact and control they have on narrative, on how conversations are shaped within nations and across nations, for them to be making losses is a huge question mark. So clearly there is scope for Twitter to become a profitable platform. But more importantly, Twitter is an important platform for controlling narratives. as I've been mentioning again and again, even on your platform, that the next generation of warfare is the control of narratives. And even in the past, I've taken the example of 1857, when narratives were used to rally the people around for the 1857 War of Independence. So clearly, as Twitter himself, Elon Musk himself calls it the town square, or Jeff Bezos calls it as the town square. It is the place where narratives are formed. Now, those narratives can be used for geopolitical purposes. They can be used for weaponization. They can also be used to move the markets. We have seen Elon Musk using Twitter to move markets. He has used Twitter to change the perceived value of cryptocurrencies. He has been able to play with the pricing of Bitcoin, and therefore he has made a neat profit out of trading in Bitcoins while using Twitter as a platform. He made Dogecoin a household name because he tweeted about it. So clearly, there are various other ways to make money out of Twitter than just making Twitter profitable. And also, Twitter itself is profitable. Can be made profitable.
Where would Musk stand? Is he right of center, left of center, centrist? What is he?
From what we see in the media and from his tweets, it seems that Musk is clearly towards the right of center, if not quite on the right. And again, there is no black and white that this person is left and this person is right. If you look at it from taxation perspective, he seems to be on the right. He's pro-business. He wants business to be untethered, and he wants to have the global market as the play field for each business person, which means that you would like to have access to China, you would like to have access to Russia, and so on and so forth. Which is where what you were showing a little while ago, the tweet from Jeff Bezos, which says, well, he's got control of the town hall, and is that good for China? So those are conspiracy theories that Jeff Bezos has put out there. But we can't take these comments lightly, because Jeff Bezos himself is a person of credibility and is a person who understands how China operates, given the large operations that he himself runs. So if he's saying something, we should not be taking that lightly. And clearly, we have seen that Elon Musk has been able to navigate China quite successfully. We do know that China has a huge problem with Twitter. We do know that there is a whole army of trolls that China has set up on Twitter, even though they have banned Twitter in China. So you'll find a whole bunch of people trying to support the Chinese government on Twitter, but there are no Chinese citizens on Twitter. So clearly, there is a large interest that China has on Twitter. Elon Musk himself has said that Twitter should be absolutely free of any bans and should not be used to have a few set of people being the arbitrator of what is free speech. Now, the dangerous part to that is that we are moving from a few set of people being the arbitrator of free speech to one person being the arbitrator of free speech. And that is quite disconcerting. So are we moving from frying pan to fire? That's the question that we need to look at.
So you raised this point about China. In all this money that he has raised, is it possible that some of this money has come from China? And I'm just kind of wondering.
I have no clue. I don't know the sources of his money. If you go by what Jeff Bezos has tweeted, and he has kind of indicated, there seems to be some kind of a China hand being played out. It is critical for China to have a platform like Twitter under its control. It weaponizes that platform. We have seen many such other platforms, getting under China's control. But if you're talking about Jeff Bezos, we ourselves see that he's got a media called Washington Post, which seems to be very soft on China. And we need to ask, why is that? So, somebody who has a platform which is already pro-China, accusing someone else to be, taking over a much more powerful platform, and that platform becoming pro-China, is a funny game to watch. I think all that it signals is that we need to be very, very careful as to what's going on. In the free world, the narration is a very important weapon. We are all democracies. We can topple democracies through narrations. We have seen false narrations coming up. We have seen riots happening through narrations. We have seen the Northeasterners being targeted in Bangalore, a completely weird thing to happen. Nobody has got anything against Northeasterners. There's no history about it. And of all the cosmopolitan places, it's Bangalore where they seem to be have a problem and have a riot. So that is the power of the narration platforms and of mass narration platforms like Twitter and WhatsApp and so on and so forth. And therefore, having a control over it provides very significant control over the free world, which is led by democracies. And we are seeing a very rapid bifurcation of the world. We are again seeing the Cold War kind of coming back. And I hope it stays cold because Cold War is better off than a World War III, as some of the players of this new split in the world are talking about. So in this new geopolitics that's getting played out, Twitter becomes a very important armament to be in control of. If you look at any of the Chinese platforms, be it Weibo or anything else, they do not have a global presence. So nobody's using Weibo globally. So there is no impact that Weibo has on geopolitics. But Twitter, on the other hand, has got very significant impact on geopolitics and on domestic politics. It has the ability to topple governments. And that's something that we need to be extremely, extremely careful about as we move forward.
I'm just wondering about India's own relationship with Twitter. We've had enormous issues with that organization in terms of the tweets that have come out, and the constant demand for them to take this down, take that down. So, does that even complicate our situation?
No, absolutely. And that's where I coined the term technological sovereignty about a decade and a half ago, because we saw that coming. Because we are seeing that it's not just other countries which are controlling how we live, how we work, how we interact with each other, but it's actually companies which are doing that, right? Twitter is a company under the jurisdiction of the US government. And therefore, it's very problematic that we need to go and beg in front of Twitter to please remove something, or please take care of something. The mighty government of India, representing 1.3 billion people, lie prostrate in front of one single company, requesting and pleading that can you please take this off and can you please take that off. That is not a situation that is good for a healthy democracy. We need to have control over our own platforms, or the platforms which influence our narratives, and that's where we need to have technological sovereignty. Now, Twitter is a great example where, in Elon Musk's own words, is the arbitrator of free speech. So they decide what is good, what is bad. They will decide who to ban, who not to ban. Under similar situations, they'll ban somebody and they'll not ban somebody else. And they've never revealed what are the principles that they're using for banning someone or not banning someone. We have seen our governors and our chief ministers getting banned on Twitter. Is that acceptable from a democratic perspective? It is clearly not acceptable. Now the question is, what will Elon Musk? What is he going to do? What does he mean by saying he will open source all the algorithms? You open source code, right? By open sourcing algorithm, we don't really know what he means. There is also a problematic statement that he made, is that he will make sure that every human on Twitter is authentic. Now, I'm working on a project where I'm actually putting sensors on Twitter. So they're not humans. We're working with IIT Delhi to put sensors who will be taking the atmospheric readings and translate that into English language and start tweeting. They're not people. But more importantly, what happens to people like the Uyghur Muslims who need to use the internet platform to put their cause forward? Now, if they are to be authenticated, which also actually means that they will be banned from the internet, because they can't afford, or are banned from the Twitter, because if they get authenticated, they will not be safe enough to start tweeting about the causes that they want to tweet about. So it is problematic in terms of what Elon Musk is planning, and it also means that a lot of people get excluded, because how will you authenticate many Indians who don't have any mechanisms of getting authenticated? They're using shared internet, they're using cafes, and so on and so forth. So you're excluding many people from the narrative, which impacts them eventually. If a local panchayat decides to build a bund, and some people think that's going to impact their fields, they will not be able to contribute to that conversation.
Yeah.
and so we are actually taking out a lot of these people. So it is a very very unknown space that we're walking into. And coming back to the point that you made, India doesn't seem to have any control over it. We are simply sitting on the sidelines and watching and praying, and whoever takes control, we are ready to fall at their feet and beg for their attention for the causes that are important for us. And that's very, very problematic.
Does that, in that sense, strengthen our case for coup, that other Twitter-like site?
I think absolutely. So I think coup is going to emerge, or it's already emerged as a very potent alternative. It uses principles which are favoring free speech. It is not going around banning people. It is careful about the context in which it operates, and it also has the option to self-authenticate. So it gives me the freedom to authenticate myself, and it is not only like in Twitter. Only Twitter grants the two blue ticks. I can't go and ask for it. So it is under Twitter's largest whether I get the two blue ticks, which indicates whether I'm authenticated or not. In Coup, any person, irrespective of the background, can then ask for authentication, gets a two yellow ticks, and is authenticated. And if I don't want to be authenticated because I'm afraid of a backlash and of my own safety of health, of my life, I will not authenticate myself on Coup. So Coup gives me that freedom. Now, the more interesting part is that Coup has already become an international platform. Many entities and many countries which have been impacted by Twitter's policies, such as Nigeria, have actually openly welcomed Coup onto into their national conversation. Coup is also in spaces where Twitter is not. For example, the vernacular space where Twitter is largely missing. Coup has done a splendid job. In fact, they've got more number of Hindi-speaking users than Twitter has in the Hindi heartland of UP. They're already playing an important role in elections, in communicating what the parties would like to communicate to their voter base who only understand vernacular language. So instead of the trickle-down effect that English-speaking people will tweet on Twitter, which will then be translated to local medium and be fed to them, and therefore, quote unquote, the new age Brahmins, which are speaking, will influence what the narration in this country should be. All of that is being overturned by platforms such as Google, where it's a people who are getting impacted with the vernacular language, who are talking about what they really want and really don't want, rather than somebody else speaking on their behalf. So it's truly democratizing the narration on the internet, and I think that's an excellent development that's happening, and it's happening organically. It is not something that the government architected, unlike Weibo that the Chinese government architected for their own requirements. Coup came out organically, and they've done a fantastic job.
But who regulates coup? Is there I mean, there's a board and all that. Is it based in India?
So Coup is based in India, and that's an important point that you're raising. So is Coup being controlled by the government? Not at all. So Coup is still being controlled by their own board, by their own investors, by their own CEO. However, what is different between Coup and Twitter is that Coup is under the jurisdiction of the Indian government. Therefore, the law of the land and the extent regulations are applicable on Twitter, on Coup. Unlike Twitter, who was not even willing to put in a representative of Twitter in India. They had Twitter running, and they would say that is Twitter India, but the narrations and the posts are being done by Twitter US. So you really can't arrest anyone because nobody is running Twitter. So that's a very circuitous and very malicious argument that was being put in. Coup is a Indian company. It's controlled by the Indian regulations, and at any point in time, in the wisdom of the Parliament and the Indian regulation making process, if there is a new regulation that comes up, that will be applicable to Coup. Coup will be subservient to the will of the people of this country, unlike Twitter. And therefore, when Coup operates within India or outside India, we get what I've been saying, a technological sovereignty through Coup. Pretty similar to us having NPCI, RuPay card. You see Russia getting hit because Visa
Yeah,
and
yeah,
MasterCard
yeah.
have been stopped. Now Union Credit of China has been stopped. That has happened a number of times. That happened to Iran before. That happened to the whistleblowers of US before. But that's a lesson we picked up, and we created RuPay in India. Coup is almost the equivalent of RuPay in India from a social media perspective and from a nation perspective.
Do you anticipate more problems now that Twitter has gone completely private, given the fact that the background is not very comfortable?
No, as I said, it seems to be a case of frying pan to fire. We were not
Yeah,
comfortable earlier when Twitter was being run by a small set of people with clearly a specified ideology, because one person hires another person of the same type, and that's what Twitter seemed to look like. Now we seem to have gone in another direction where it's not controlled by a set of people, but by one individual who also seems to have one particular way of leaning. So,
yeah,
will we eventually get free speech? Should we put all our faith in one person? And why should we be at the mercy of one person, good or bad? We really don't know. So, Elon Musk seems to be a great guy, and he could go the other way around also. We don't know. The point is, why should 1.3 billion people be dependent on the goodness of one
yeah,
person?
yeah.
And that is not an acceptable situation under any circumstances. So it is, as I mentioned a few times earlier, is a problematic situation, given that the power and sway that Twitter has in both the national narratives as well as the global narratives, and it impacts the democracies more. It will not impact a China or a Russia or a Pakistan for that matter, but it does impact India because we are a democratic country, and one can very, very significantly impact the democratic processes through manipulation of the narration.
JG, do you work with government? Is there a sense and awareness that technologically we should be able to, weaponize the narrative when we want, and we should have the means and the capability to do it?
No, you're right. I do work fairly closely with the government, but I don't have visibility to us using narration as a weapon. If you go back to the Nazis, they had an entire ministry of propaganda. That was nothing
Oh,
but
yeah,
weaponization of narrative, right? Propaganda
yeah,
was
yeah,
what the communists used to use as a word. Companies use the word PR, public relations, right? Media management. It's essentially narrative being
yeah,
controlled, right? Clearly, one of the finest manager of narration was the US. They would do umpteen number of wars and come out as the golden heroes, killing millions of
yeah,
people. Still, they'll be coming out as shiningly, shining angels. They were the
yeah,
first ones to use a nuclear bomb and kill millions of people. Unpardonable. If there was a war crime ever committed in history of mankind, that was the crime that was committed.
yeah,
There was no
absolutely.
taken up against them. So we had US as the key controller of narration. Now we see that China seems to be coming up, and not only coming up, they seem to be beating US in that. They seem to be taking US for a ride on many of the narrations. They seem to be having deep control over many of these narration platforms, such as the Washington Post and Twitter, knowingly or unknowingly. I don't know whether Washington Post or Twitter and so on know that they are being pro-China, but clearly from what shows up, it seems to be pro-China. So other nations are definitely showing up as entities who are really focused on using narration as a weapon. It seems that India is attempting and trying. Is it clearly showing up? I'm not entirely sure about that.
So, given the fact that we tend to proceed at a rather slow pace, perhaps somewhere there is an awareness, but it'll probably take us time to get there.
No, absolutely, absolutely. There have been attacks on if I can use the word attacks on Indian military using social media. There have been honey traps that have been set up through social media. We are not a homogeneous army. We're not a homogeneous military, unlike the Chinese military or our friendly neighbors on the west, who have got a fairly homogeneous military. One can actually use social media to divide our military. and
Yeah.
that's going to take the breath out of our ability to defend ourselves. So yes, it is extremely important. Platforms like the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research has been tom-tomming about this issue for over a decade now, well over a decade. And similarly, other platforms have been doing the same. In fact, Nitin of Bharat Shakti himself has been talking about it quite a few times. In fact, we've been running seminars on National Conclave on technological sovereignty, talking about how narratives and technology can be used to actually degrade the military capability of a nation without actually shooting off a single bullet. Having said that, I would also like to bring to your attention that we did win a war without firing a single bullet, which was actually a non-kinetic warfare driven by narration. This was, quote unquote, the conflict that we had with Malaysia, where the Malaysian Prime Minister made some intemperate remarks on a certain part of India where they had no business to talk about. That was an internal affair of India, but the Malaysian Prime Minister went and kept talking about it.
Yeah.
As a response, the Indian government kind of leaned and said, well, we might just ban all import of palm oil from Malaysia. Now, do
Yeah.
keep in mind that we can't do that under our WTO obligations. But that signaling was good enough for the private sector to stop importing all palm oil
Yeah.
from Malaysia. And the Malaysian economy almost came down to its knees because of that. They came back. They, in fact, changed the prime minister eventually, and they came back and they said, "Let's normalize the relationships." And we should not have done what we did, and poking into Indian affairs without us having a locus standi. And then everything went back to normal. So that was a classic example of a war being managed without fighting a bullet. So India is there, and it's not that we are completely oblivious of the power of narration. But is it being used on social media? I'm not entirely sure about that. It has definitely been used very, very effectively, and hats off to that. And I just hope that we are far more focused on the ability of non-kinetic warfare using the platforms such as Twitter.
So, in that sense, maybe coup could help sometime in the future.
Absolutely, Coup can help, and we probably need a few other platforms such as Coup to be able to strengthen the ability of the government and of our people to be able to defend ourselves and also to express ourselves. We as humans need to have free expression. We need to be able to sift between what is true, what is not true, being able to find the facts. And not be driven by either a US propaganda or a European propaganda or a Chinese propaganda. We need to have the ability to find the truth. And platforms like Coup are working towards that. And that's very, very heartening. It's a very positive development that's happening. And we probably need more such platforms in India to be able to continue to have a free life, to preserve our way of life, our way of working, way of interacting, impact on our education, on our healthcare, on all other aspects of our society.
Well, cheers to that. Jayjit, as always, great talking to you. Great insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Surya. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be in your show.
And for those of you who have been tracking this conversation, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media and Twitter. Thank you and good night.